We all care about privacy a lot more than sometimes we give ourselves credit for. And I think if we can take that and apply that to the business, then there's such a big opportunity for us to build a relationship from a technology and from a personal privacy level to really find a solution that's going to be user-friendly, but at the same time also respects that privacy.
Raffaele is Head of Marketing and Partnerships at Termly, a privacy and compliance platform built for SMBs and recently acquired by Group 1.
Essentially, all of this is going towards a required implementation and required incorporation into technology and into business requirements that because we're headed there, let's be proactive in working through that. And having one solution to provide all of these privacy solutions is hugely beneficial.
Termly helps companies manage policies, cookie consent, and regulatory requirements and works closely with hosting providers, website builders, and agencies, helping them turn privacy into a new revenue stream and a stickier product.
Our approach has always been, let's educate our customer first. We have a free-based model which requires no financial commitment whatsoever to use privacy. And then when the businesses grow and they get to a place where they need to be using more advanced features and more robust privacy solutions to service their business, and that's where we can engage and do well.
We talk about why privacy is becoming a standard part of hosting, how providers can actually monetize it, and why this is something the industry can't ignore anymore.
Sure, you can go to ChatGPT and write a policy and try to do that, but is it the policy that's going to actually service the business in the way that you're intending it to be? It's not something just to do. You're doing it for a reason, to understand that you are taking privacy seriously.
Why should hosting providers care about privacy compliance? Or maybe, to put it really straight, why should a hosting provider be interested in using Termly as a solution?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we get that all the time. I think privacy in itself across the board is a new normal, and there is industry adoption across the board. Obviously, from a hosting perspective, mass hosting perspective, it's something that a lot of providers are looking at because they're just continually getting more inquiries about building value and also providing privacy solutions and security solutions as part of their platform. So, Termly's been in this space for a very long time. We've been focused in the SMB market, and we're a leader in that space across the world. And because we're serving this SMB market, small and medium businesses across the world, and we understand the nuances of hosting providers and website builders, and in that space, we're very attuned to exactly the needs and how to make that successful as far as a partnership and a relationship.
All right, yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to ask is okay, I'm a hosting provider. Why should I actually care about the privacy compliance? Is this something that I should upsell to my customers, or is it something that is actually, let's say, a worry or something that I really need to take care of, or there will be some consequences because of that?
Yeah, great question. The customers and the hosting providers, they're at the infrastructure layer, right? They're hosting those websites. They operate globally, and there's an increased expectation that they have this safe environment to host their site, right? And so in the sense that those are all three qualifications for privacy. Those are all three very good use cases as to why that's a perfect fit to bring added value to evolving. So that infrastructure that you're providing that provides that safety feel, taking that off the customer is a huge value add. And from there, we all know that privacy is becoming standard. These laws are moving the industry into a place where, from a technology standpoint, it's getting adopted by large players and large technologies from the browser level all the way through technology and implementation from the website level. So in the end, if we know it's moving towards implementation and requirements, this is something that, hosting providers can't ignore. They have to consider how this fits into their platform.
Mm-hmm. All right. So before we will talk about how you actually do that with hosting provider, maybe we should talk more about what Termly actually is and a little background story of how you guys started and what it is right now.
Yeah, for sure. We're a privacy compliance solution. We kind of tag ourselves as kind of an all-in-one compliance solution for SMBs, and we really focus on managing policies from a privacy policy, terms and conditions, generating policies that are highly complex and legally vetted so that customers can comply with privacy laws across the world. And even from a policy standpoint, even requirements from ad platforms and social platforms and other things that operate their business from a marketing standpoint that require such documents to do so. Especially from an e-commerce standpoint, we have return policies, shipping policies, anything that makes sort of the operational of the business fully transparent online. And then we also have consent. Consent is a huge requirement from a GDPR and CCPA perspective. I'll kind of talk more about those regulatory laws probably in a bit, but in the end, there's requirements on businesses to manage users' consent. That's essentially cookie banners, that is consent logs, that is managing scripts on a website to run or not run based on user preferences. Close to that on a regular basis on different sites that we visit, and that consent is real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually extremely annoying. Like the guy who pulled this off and decided that, okay, it's a good idea that every website should now bother you about clicking some random stuff he's a devil.
Yeah, it is something that's interruptive, right, into the website experience. Yeah. And I think Termly tries to not only help businesses sort of navigate that from an impact perspective, but, at the same time, we also have to understand that it may be annoying to some, but it's very important to others. And I think that at the end of the day, the core functionality and thinking behind consent is, do I want to be tracked? Or do I not want to be tracked? And I think a lot of individuals take their privacy seriously, and their privacy is something that they really care about. And, I think there's better nuances on how we can do that in technology standpoint. Things are evolving that way. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to really the value of managing privacy and the trust that builds, right? So in addition to that, there's other ancillary products that we have from a privacy standpoint. I think one of our most important features is kind of having our awareness and ongoing compliance, being educated in that space, definitely with some of our partners and our agency partners and businesses that need to be aware of these things as the regulatory laws change over time. So being able to have a partner to navigate that space is hugely important in what we provide to our customers.
Right, and about the company itself, if you can shed some light on how did it all start?
Yeah, early teens, so 2015, 2016 is when Termly started to get going. Coinciding with some of the privacy laws that came about in Europe, like the GDPR. Been in business since then, really focused. We are a US-based company, but we did get acquired recently by Group One, and we're really excited about that acquisition. It's been a hugely beneficial acquisition for us to continue to operate as Termly, but at the same time, really dive into the hosting space. Dive into the European influence too as well. We're a global company, but at the end of the day, having more of a footprint in the EU is extremely beneficial for us, and it was a strategic move by both parts, and it's been a hugely beneficial relationship thus far. And like I said, we're kind of 2.5 years in at this point, and we're continuing to plug along. But we're remotely based and have a ton of employees around the world and regulatory bodies too as well that we collaborate with. And so, as I mentioned before, we're an industry leader, especially in the SMB space. A lot of our competitors are in the enterprise space, but we focus on servicing the SMB market, and that's where we find success for sure.
Yeah, actually, when you talk about it, it actually really makes sense to get a footprint in EU because it's so much obsessed about those regulations. Yeah. So it's a perfect fit.
Mm-hmm. It is.
So if I understand correctly, so Termly is a company that makes it just easy to have an online website and not be worried about all the regulatory stuff.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Look at the plumber, the electrician, the SMB that's managing their site. They don't want and don't have the time to really worry about compliance issues. And they don't want something to come across their desk because their website is non-compliant from a privacy standpoint. So we make that easy. We make that simple for them to manage. We're a SaaS-based company. So, a lot of our customers customers with self-service. It's really easy to use on our platform. But at the same time, we have a very robust partnership program, everything from APIs to integrations that we can really build in that infrastructure into different platforms that not only make it easy for their SMB clients, but working with agencies and multi-site partners that really can distribute privacy to their customer base on a mass scale.
Before we move forward, I would like to thank our gold sponsors who help us grow web hosting today and this podcast. Extendify, Name Hero, Patchstack, Monarchs, and Panel Alpha. These companies, just like web hosting today, bring real value to the web hosting industry. If you'd like to join us and make your brand more visible to decision makers in the industry, feel free to reach out. What's the model? How can I make money out of it?
Yeah.
Let's say I'm a hosting provider. How can I make money? Like, what's the typical, model that you offer?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I mean, we have a reseller model for sure that we use with our partners that really positions the integration and the marketing side of privacy to their customer base. So from a perspective of some of our agencies that have implemented some of our hosting providers, it's a value add to their existing products. So for example, they're bundling it into their existing plans as a value add. In addition to that, they're also reselling it individually to their customers based on request. And so, from really where you see the impact is the reselling revenue that you get so average revenue per user increases. That's a huge thing from our partners. And then secondarily, you also see churn being impacted. So you're seeing added revenue come in from retaining those customers because now you have a stickier product. Privacy is not just a set it and forget it. It's something that needs to be managed over time. And there's added value there from an agency perspective, but also from our hosting providers that we partner with. They're trying to add value and add stickiness. And so at the end of the day, being able to incorporate privacy as a part of their solution allows them to have additional touch points throughout the year, add value, and then obviously that affects decreasing churn and increasing retention.
So what's the typical pricing for the end user?
Yeah, great question. Our retail price is $180 a year, $20 a month, depending on what that is. And I'm talking US dollars. It's a little bit less in the EU. But essentially, we try to make it affordable for SMBs. And, given the fact of lawyers and policy creation and doing all this stuff on your own, there's a significant cost savings, and we want to make it affordable for the SMB market. We're not trying to get to the enterprise level, and then especially from a resale perspective, it makes it beneficial for these partners to be able to see it from a wholesale perspective. Obviously, there's a special pricing for those type of customers when based on volume, and then there's larger margins for them to be able to pass it on to their customers and sell it at a similar price point. We see partners increasing that price point tenfold depending on the services they bundle with it and how much they put into the platform. So, but there's obviously some guidance and things that we can offer to help position it right within their product offering.
Do you find it difficult when working with hosting providers, given that you are owned by actual hosting company, right?
Yeah.
Like Group One probably shouldn't be called a hosting company anymore, but obviously that was how they started, and they've been evolving, and obviously they were acquiring a lot of SaaS, and it's a much more deeper offer that they have.
Yeah.
But do you find it difficult when working with a hosting provider that they say, hey, you know what, we kind of give you an access to our client base or things like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think at the end of the day, it was something that we even considered too as well. But I think expertise in the marketplace, really having real life examples and integrations and partners that are similar, and I think the EU space is something that I mentioned before is also beneficial. Really is what drives those conversations with hosting providers. I think they're looking for partners that understand the space. They want partners that are servicing their customer base or their ICP, and that's the SMB market, right? And so I think regardless of kind of who our family partners are or hosting with Group One, it's actually positioned us really well in the space to where they're looking to us to really guide them to see how to make it successful in their hosting platforms. And so it's benefited us well. That concern has definitely been brought up before, but I think overall it really comes down to the trust and a relationship directly with Termly and the backing of Group One and the expertise that comes with it. And I think from there, we've had nothing but positive relationships with our hosting providers and website providers too as well.
When is the best time to sell a hosting company? Is it now or maybe in 5 years? The truth is, there is no simple answer. every situation is different. That is why it helps to talk to someone with real experience in hosting M&A, someone who deals with this every day. If you want to understand your options, get in touch with us for an honest conversation. Completely confidential, no commitments. Right. Okay, so can we talk about use cases maybe? Because
Sure.
I think that should be much more explained in terms of what are the use cases of the end customers, or when end customers should be definitely interested. You said about the what is the cookies? How is professionally called?
It's a
Banner.
good, yeah.
Cookie banner. Exactly. Yes. So
Yeah.
one is cookie banner, but then you have a bunch of different extra documents that you can use, like terms of service and things
Yeah.
like that. So can we talk about all these difficult touch points
Sure.
where Termly is actually useful for the end customer and can help?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think we can talk about from a location perspective. I think regulatory and privacy laws are, essentially by country, and in the US by state. I think where you are located definitely determines the requirements that are being passed down to businesses in order to comply with privacy laws. So that's something that is a good place to start. From there, you also have now the technical requirements that come down to it. So you have really two policies, as you mentioned, and also the consent or the cookie banner. Consent, let's start there. I think in the end, you're talking any website instance, any particular online presence that you have is going to need some sort of compliance towards privacy and consent. So that is managing your scripts, whether that's going through GTM or being on site, scripts directly managed on the site. There needs to be some sort of mechanism that can disable those scripts from a cookie banner or a consent management platform perspective, so that when somebody does opt in or opt out of consent of being tracked, then our script can manage those and fire those ones that are appropriate. So that's a great use case. And again, we're talking website providers, hosting providers, we're talking agency, multi-site targets, WordPress ecosystem. That's a big one. So at the end of the day, all of these use cases are very valid, especially when it comes down to an online presence of some kind. Policies, I think, are more widespread. Policies are pretty much required regardless of where the law is, for two reasons. One, we have we have regulations on different platforms that require, say, for example, a privacy policy. So some standard use cases like this: do you use social media? Do you place ads with Google? Do you do Google Ads or AdSense, across the board? These are common platforms that many businesses use that require a privacy policy. Obviously, specific industries like the health industry, other things like that, require privacy policies and even terms and conditions to be able to be presented on the website. Policies across the board are something that every website should have, regardless of location. Consent, there's some flexibility there, but we see this as a holistic, and as I mentioned before, an all-in-one solution, because being more conservative toward privacy, because essentially all of this is going towards a required implementation and required incorporation into technology and into business requirements, that because we're headed there, let's be proactive in working through that, and having one solution to provide all of these privacy solutions to make you compliant, to avoid these type of regulatory laws and fines down the road is hugely beneficial. So you're not having to incorporate multiple platforms, multiple solutions, and that's kind of our approach towards privacy and the different platforms and use cases that would apply.
Interesting. I think one thing that you've mentioned, so do you have industry-specific documentation and something that a company can use, or how does it really work?
Yeah, for sure. We have resources based on location to determine, what type of privacy laws are in your area and which ones to consider. We have specific use cases for e-commerce and different industries too as well. So, we're an education-first platform, and I think most of our competitors are product-led. We're really, education and marketing-led, and I think the reason why that is served us really well is that privacy is very confusing. And at the end of the day, if the user is not educated, then they're hesitant to move forward and implement privacy. And I think that we see that even from a regulatory standpoint, where you have these regulatory bodies implementing privacy laws, and then businesses are still surprised that they're getting fines and getting lawsuits across their desk because they don't understand it. And I think that our approach has always been, let's educate our customer first. Let's put value added sources. We have a free base model which requires no financial commitment whatsoever to use privacy. And then when the businesses grow and they get to a place where they need to be using more advanced features and more robust privacy solutions to service their business, and that's where we can engage and do well. But I think at the end of the day, it is something that has definitely served us well, and education is by far the first step towards understanding privacy and obviously adopting it as part of your day-to-day business operations.
Right. So something that comes to my mind. Shouldn't I use ChatGPT to write me these I can easily make privacy policy through ChatGPT. Why should I use Termly and Pay? Something that comes to my mind, but I guess it should come to the mind of the end customer if I want to try to upsell it, right? What's your point of view there?
Great question. I think in the age of AI, this is something that we get a lot, but sure, you can go to ChatGPT and write a policy and try to do that. But I think the issue becomes is it the policy that's going to be, one, compliant first and foremost, and two, actually service the business in the way that you're intending it to be. So, ChatGPT is going to pull sources and other things on how to write that policy. It's going to be pretty generic. It's not going to address specific requirements from specific laws as to what to include in your privacy policy. And at the end of the day, you're going to be prompting and asking questions of ChatGPT and AIs to build a privacy policy that you may not know questions to ask. And so, our platform really is a step-by-step process to walk you through, answer specific questions, and then we have legally vetted policies that are custom to the business to do so. Plus, you can have confidence in the platform that whatever we provide to you is going to be compliant with the regulatory laws in your area. So you don't have that sort of sense of trust or sense of comfortability with with AI at this point, especially platforms that are just generating again generic privacy policies. So it is important to understand that it's not something just to do. You're doing it for a reason. You're doing it because you want to not only service your customers and build trust with your customers that you're handling their data correctly. So that's step number one. But two, it's also to understand that you are taking privacy seriously. And at the end of the day, that whatever you're going to be putting on your website should accurately reflect your business operations and how you handle data. And there's a lot of nuances to that. So we can't stop people from using AI to do so. But at the end of the day, we don't encourage it. But, it is a good starting point for education. A lot of our users use LLMs to educate themselves on privacy, to understand that. And then we hope that from there, they pick a solution that's going to be beneficial for them to actually draft and to manage consent and policies towards being compliant, and because they take it seriously.
Right. And another question that comes to my mind is, did you have any situation that you had a client that was using your policy documentation and all the stuff and had a lawsuit and a problem with that? Or was there a case like that?
Yeah, typically what we see is that we have a lot of customers coming to us because they've received a lawsuit and they weren't using a solution before. A lot of these ambulance in the areas where privacy laws are prominent. I could take California, I can take several European countries that we've seen this too, that they are identifying cookies that are not being blocked, or the scripts are not being suppressed because they opted into consent. And so they get a lawsuit across their desk saying that, we have found that these cookies were firing and that I've opted out of consent and it shouldn't be. So, this is a violation of my privacy, and so on and so forth. It could be even tied to specifically not even responding to a lawsuit, things like that. So they're looking for guidance. They're looking for an answer to solve those issues. So then obviously we can implement. There have been times where some of our customers didn't implement their privacy correctly. So we helped them with that. In the end, the liability is really not addressing the lawsuit and ignoring it. And that's where we see a lot of people actually end up getting the fines. But the regulatory bodies give response times and leeway to the business to be able to address those issues. And a lot of our customers that come to, a lot of our non-customers that come to us that eventually become a customer are looking for that guidance. And obviously we help them implement that technology solution to provide it. And then we give them also guidance to respond to the lawsuit. We're not a law firm in any way, shape, or form. We always make sure that we emphasize that, but we definitely give some guidance, and we have documentation that allows them to be able to navigate those types of lawsuits so that they don't get fined at the end of the day.
So you don't have any services, or you don't provide like law advisory services?
Yeah, no, we do not. Yeah, privacy is much more than just the technology that we provide. There's other regulations within the GDPR framework that require practices within the organization to fully be compliant. So, we really focus on the online presence and really focus on making sure that is buttoned up. But, because of that, we don't offer sort of, in-house counsel that can advise individuals. Now, we do have partnerships and other things that we can advise. We always say that if you ever get to a point where this is getting complex and it's going beyond sort of your online presence, then we always recommend to seek out a privacy law firm within your area. But again, mostly we're dealing with SMBs that are getting sort of targeted because of their online presence. And so from there, we can obviously address that with our platform.
All right. So who should be considering partnering with Termly? And what's the best use case that you can, what are the best use cases that you could find, interesting in your case?
Yeah, great question. I think, website builders, from a partnership standpoint, website builders are a great partner for us. I think at the end of the day, we have good experience in that space. We understand the integration and technology part of that integration, really guide with our partners and really focus on not only adopting the technology side and exposing that to their customers as a value add and added product, but it's also the marketing too. Part of our partner program is to really focus on partnering with those website builders and other partners to really market and have an ongoing engagement. Something like this that we're doing today, Conrad, that we do with our partners, where we put podcasts together and we do webinars to really educate our customers. So that is something that we have found great success because, look, at the end of the day, they have to resell it. They have to make it successful and generate revenue. Mm-hmm. And we're not one to just do a partnership and say, hey, good luck. We want to be a part of that process. We want to learn from that. And so we found good success. And I think that carries over to, multi-site agencies that have that same approach. There may be the technical integration side, but there's definitely the selling side of it that really, really want to be a part of and find success with them to do so, in addition to obviously creating a value add to their existing products. Part of that multi-site and agency is also the WordPress ecosystem. I think we can't ignore the fact that majority of shared hosting and websites out there are hosting WordPress sites, and how we integrate with our WordPress community and making that easy and consistent there too as well. So that's also a great segment. And then hosting providers, nuances in industries, brands that particularly have multi-sites, things like that. So I think from a partner perspective, we're pretty open. We even have an affiliate channel. So we work with affiliates to try to, build value into their content and obviously into their offerings if they're not wanting to do a full integration or just want to offer additional products that align with their customer base. So we have a pretty robust sort of partner program that can be many different facets that we can find success in generating revenue, as well as building trust and added value through privacy.
And you have a plugin for WordPress.
We do. Yep, we do. And we continue to invest in that. We're actually going to be attending WordCamp in the EU here in June in Poland. So we're really excited about that and continue to invest that. And honestly, with the Group 1 partnership and the different brands that are in the WordPress ecosystem, like Rank Math and WP Rocket and a few others, that, it's really helped us solidify more of a relationship with the WordPress community too as well. So we're really excited to really start, increasing our investment there, because I think that at the end of the day, there's so much value to the WordPress community, and we want to continue to help them continue to grow.
Can you actually talk about that more? Because what WordPress has to do with all of that, right? Is this just about the easy integration, or how do you feel that Termly is going to, as you said, commit to the community?
Yeah, I think from a WordPress standpoint, it's open source. We try to understand that perspective from the community side. So there is contribution, there's ongoing commitment for us to support that community. And I think we do that in two fronts. I think obviously from a platform perspective, we try to make our solution as easy to implement as possible. We continue to invest in the plugin itself to make it more intuitive and adapt to the evolution of WordPress in itself. But I think the second part is understanding what type of customers use WordPress. And I had mentioned before many times that, the SMB market is where we live. And a lot of our competitors are in the enterprise space, and the pricing is not according to, SMB market. We try to really focus into that. And I think that plays well with the WordPress community. I think that, WordPress in general is in a accumulation of SMBs, agencies that are servicing SMBs. So it's a really great space for us to be in and continue to support that. And not only from a price sensitivity standpoint, but at the same time, we understand that, there is a specific technology and support that comes with WordPress. And, we have direct support. We manage support from our teams. We don't outsource. We really focus on global support across the board. And I think that resonates really well with the WordPress community. And then, like I said, at the end of the day, it really comes down to all of those nuances to really support the community as a whole.
Great. So should we talk about the future then? What do you think is going to be impacting how should I say, privacy compliance space, or what do you think will be happening in the future in terms of online presence and being compliant with all the regulations?
Yeah, great question. And we touched base on that a little bit earlier, but I think we can talk to it kind of in two fronts. You had mentioned the cookie banner. Okay, I think that's a great one to start. How you don't like those banners? It's annoying. Yes. To be able to click on those all the time, right? So we see the space from a technology standpoint where we start seeing privacy becoming sort of invisible. Now, I want to preface that word because I think there's maybe some negative perception. Well, then I don't need a consent solution, or I don't need privacy policies, and I don't, because it's invisible now. But that's not the case. Where we start seeing is that it's more technology driven. And let me give you a good example of this. Google Consent Mode. That is a technology that Google put out to be able to manage consent from a technology standpoint to allow analytics to be more transparent because it was being affected, right? Opting in and out of consent affected analytics, and Google Consent Mode allows us to be able to integrate that into GTM, into script handling, into analytics, so that we have more transparency from a marketing perspective, from an analytics standpoint. There's other added benefits to that too as well. But that integration, we're a gold CMP Google Consent partner. Actually, their conference is coming up in June too as well that we're attending. But, at the end of the day, we have a huge investment into integrating with Google to make sure that consent and privacy is respected, that from a technology standpoint, it's operationally sound, and it works with platforms like Google and others that are using GTM to be able to manage their scripts across the board. So I use that as an example as to this word invisible, where there's going to be more emphasis on technology to integrate privacy solutions into browsers, into global privacy control, which is something that's being pushed by California, to where, users can set their privacy settings from a browser level, and then it works with CMPs and the website invisibly behind the doors to be able to manage that across websites. So, Conrad, there will be a time, I imagine, sometime in the future, where there may not be cookie banners where you opt in and out, but it still puts the emphasis on you as the user to set your privacy settings, whether that's on the browser level, whether that's on a platform level, to be able to respect the privacy of the ones that care about it a lot. And I say this anecdotal story all the time, and I think it's worth mentioning here, is that, I think everybody cares about privacy to a certain level. In fact, I think we all care about privacy a lot more than sometimes we give ourselves credit for. You're not going to go out, Conrad, and give away, personal information to some random person. But we're comfortable that when we're online to some degree. And I think if we can take that personal attachment to privacy and apply that to the business that we work for, that we own, that we operate with, and understand that the users themselves respect their privacy, then I think there's such a big opportunity for us to build a relationship from a technology and from a personal privacy level that bridges that gap to really find a solution that's going to be, not only user-friendly, but at the same time also respects that privacy. And so bring that personal level, and you'll understand that this is why privacy is becoming more of a requirement, and essentially is at a place where it's mostly going to be something that every platform needs to address and obviously have a part of their solution.
Sounds like a perfect ending to me. Raffaele, thank you for the interview. I think it's definitely a topic that is often understated. Mm-hmm. Can I say that? Because I think, like, from my point of view, as I said, it's just annoying, right? Mm-hmm. in many cases, people are saying they're concerned about the privacy, and at the same time, they put their whole family photos on social media like it's nothing, right?
Right.
But I think it's definitely something that we should talk about because, internet is not, like you said, you're interacting with different people from all around the world that you don't even talk to, right? So there's always a risk, and there's always it's always good to talk about the security from the personal point of view, and it's good that you guys are helping with that actually, So that's definitely a topic to talk more about.
For sure.
So again, thank you for the interview, and I guess it's going to be exciting.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm sure we'll carry on this conversation another time too as well. So looking forward to it. Appreciate it.